Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Asti Silver. My husband, Rabbi Benjamin Silver, and I are assistant rabbi and rebbitzin of the Young Israel Shomrai Emunah that is led by Rabbi Rosenbaum. So welcome everybody that has joined us here tonight. What's going on in the world right now is enough to cause anxiety in even the healthiest of people. And the only thing that we can control in this situation is how we are going to respond to this. So Dr. Ravin is going to be giving us some tips on how we can cope with it. Ideally, I would love to have created a support group where we could all come together and discuss how we're all dealing with this. And towards the end of tonight's talk, hopefully we can create somewhat of that environment virtually. Please use your voices. Use your voice for questions and use your voice for answers as well. Dr. Rachel Ravin mainly deals with children and adolescents, but she deals with college students and adults as well. She uses a variety of techniques to help people deal with so many different things that come up and different challenges for them in the world. And a lot of that has to do with anxiety. One of her techniques she uses is cognitive behavioral therapy. She has been working in school settings since 2001, so about 19 years now. And we are really blessed to hear somebody local to give us advice on how to deal with this, because that makes everything so much more real. So I would like to hand the mic over to Dr. Rachel Ravin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Esti. Thank you, Rabbi Silver. I very much appreciate you guys putting this series together for me and for the community. I think it's really important at this time that we all come together and support one another and help each other with any ideas that we each have. Today, my topic is managing anxiety in our kids and ourselves. And I just want to start off with a thank you also to Rabbi Rosenbaum and all the community rabbis and rebbitzins for helping us stay afloat at this time. Also, a huge thank you to all the first responders, healthcare professionals, everybody on the front line right now, doctors, nurses, firefighters, EMTs, their spouses and significant others, and the list goes on. You guys are truly the heroes in all of this, and we appreciate all that you're doing for us. I want to start with some thoughts about managing anxiety, and then we can do question and answers at the end. When we get to the question and answer part, I would love for others to share your ideas as well. So if somebody has a good idea for an answer, let's all use each other to be able to learn from one another. So I want to introduce myself, although it sounds like Mrs. Silver did a good job with that. I am a clinical psychologist with a specialty in working with kids and adolescents. I have a private practice in Kent Mill, and I also work for Sulam, which is a special education program that is based in the Berman Hebrew Academy. So a lot of people have been saying to me these days, wow, I'm sure you're seeing so many kids who are so anxious right now. And what's interesting is when this all started and I was noticing adult anxiety increasing, I would have a student come in, a client come in, and person after person, I would expect to see a lot of anxiety. And I would think, okay, this person for sure is going to be talking about coronavirus. And then they wouldn't, or they would say like, oh my gosh, the biggest thing happened. I can't believe that what's going on right now. And I'd be thinking to myself, yeah, duh. And then they would talk about something totally different. And then I think, okay, the next person, they're for sure going to come in and talk about it. And then they weren't. And I actually noticed that the kids and adolescents, for the most part that I were working with, were quite calm, at least in the beginning. And I have a few theories about this. One is I actually think that so many people around them are anxious right now that for once, they almost feel calm and they feel like, okay, maybe other people can kind of hold the anxiety for me. Another thought is that there has been a lot of discussion about kids not getting the coronavirus, and so, or specifically dying from the coronavirus. And so I think that has caused kids to not feel as anxious about it. It could be the teenage idea that they're invincible. There's something in psychology we call the personal fable. And it's basically like, oh, well, this isn't going to happen to me. And I think that that could be going on for a lot of our kids and teens. Another piece, now that the schools are starting to figure out what they're doing, is that academic demands are less for many of the kids. There's less homework. There may be no tests. There's less time in school. A lot of the kids don't have the commutes that they're used to. So the academic demands are less. And then for other kids, the social stressors are less. Kids don't have to navigate as many social situations when they're at home. There are less things going on that they might feel like they're missing out on. So they don't feel as left out maybe as they typically would. And then my favorite answer, which was when I was talking to a parent about this, she said, Rachel, she said, I really think that my kid is less anxious because you've already given them so many tools for how to deal with anxiety. And so, you know, she's already put some of those skills and techniques into use. So that certainly made me feel good. But whatever it is, certainly many kids and teens, and certainly we as adults are more anxious. And I think that's really why we decided to have this discussion, is to talk about what are some strategies to help manage that anxiety at this time. So I also want to say I'm actually in a Facebook group about parenting under quarantine. Many of you might be in it yourselves. And one thing I'm noticing is that the parents of toddlers are experiencing significant challenges that are actually different from parents of older kids. Kids not understanding what's going on. They might be saying, I want to go back to school. I don't understand why I can't go back to school. I want to have a play date with a friend. They're having a really hard time understanding the bigger picture. And I just want to put out there that I recognize that we all have different homes that look different right now and are experiencing different things, trying to work, with little kids in the house versus older kids, maybe not having a job right now and the stresses that come along with that. And I just want us all, as we're talking also in the question and answers, to just be respectful and understand that we're all dealing with this in the best way that we can and trying to figure it out together. So what can we do as parents to help ourselves and our kids? First, let's start with helping ourselves. I'm sure many of you have heard the analogy before, but I think it bears repeating, which is that it's really important, just like on an airplane, when they say when the oxygen mask comes down, put it over your face before you put it on your child's face. We need to be doing that for ourselves. We need to take care of ourselves so that we can give our kids the support that they need. So what can we do for ourselves? I go to conferences a lot. I go to conferences on many different topics. They might be conferences on anxiety, they might be depression, they might be stress management. But one thing I recognize and have realized over time is that there are 5 things that I see that come up over and over again, no matter what the topic of the conference. And I just want to talk about those 5 things briefly. And again, I don't think these are going to be new to you, but I think they bear mentioning. One is what we eat. Eating nutritious food, eating regular meals, trying to stay healthy in what we eat is extremely important in taking care of ourselves and managing anxiety or depression for that matter. Sleep. It's important to try to get sleep. And I know it's hard. I'm a late night person myself, but trying to find a regular time to go to bed and waking up on a specific time, having that routine, getting enough sleep is very, very important for ourselves and taking care of ourselves. Exercise. I cannot mention enough the benefits of exercise. And I'm sure those of you that are exercising know it, and I don't even need to tell you. But the more we can get out, the more we can take a walk, get fresh air, you know, see the trees and the budding flowers. It makes such a difference. Getting our heart rate up and beating and are just sweating, getting those endorphins out. It's really, really healthy for us. There actually is research that came out relatively recently that talks about how exercise is 3 times more effective than most antidepressant and anti-anxiety medications. And while I always knew that there were significant benefits of exercise, I was amazed to hear that it actually can be 3 times more effective than most anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications. So I recognize it's hard to get up off the sofa if you're not feeling well emotionally. But if you can do everything in your power to try to, you know, kick yourself into gear and get moving, it really helps a lot. The 4th thing is avoiding alcohol, too much alcohol, avoiding drugs, and avoiding too much caffeine. It's important that we pay attention. Also smoking. So avoiding those things that are not good for us. And then the last thing is drinking water. Hydrating ourselves is extremely important, and it's great if we can just drink water throughout the day to help keep ourselves hydrated. Okay, other things to take care of ourselves. If you do have a job, I would say see what parts of your job you can still do. It helps as a distraction. It can help you feel like you're accomplishing something. Talk to your friends to help you think outside the box. Maybe this is the time to start writing that book that you always wanted to write, or take on projects that you've been putting off for a long time. It'll help us feel accomplished. Protective factors. I learned in graduate school that we have these things called protective factors, things that help us deal more effectively with stressful events. Some examples of protective factors are social, having a friend group, community, positive family relationships, religion. These are all things that help protect us in times of stress. And for me, I think about how these are things that are helping me get by at this time. Lining chairs up on Shabbos, well across from my next door neighbor. We have our chairs on one side. My next door neighbor has a set of chairs a good 10 feet apart, and we get to interact. And for me and for my husband and for the kids and for their family, it's been amazing to be able to have that connection. So certainly keep the physical distance. I'm all for physical distance, but it is helpful and healthy to interact with our friends and feel that support. We're blessed to have religion. We can daven to Hashem. We can reach out to our Rebbeim. We can say Tehillim. We can give tzedakah. We can do chesed, and the list goes on. We're blessed to have that in our lives, and so I encourage us all to seek ways to use it. Another thing is being kind to yourself. Think of one thing that you did well today, and let's actually take a second and do that now. Let's everybody just pause and take a second to think of one thing that you did well today. For me, I'm going to say it was that I painted my daughter's nails. That was something she wanted done. So I took some time and we sat outside in the beautiful weather and I did that. So sometimes it's good to just realize just one thing that you did well, and being kind to ourselves can help us feel better. Okay, I'm going to talk now about helping our kids. It's really important to help our kids learn about different feelings, learning feeling words and expressing their feelings. And in fact, I just started, I can't believe I did this and my kids are not happy about it, but I started a YouTube channel. Well, you can go check it out and see if it actually worked, Dr. Rachel Ravin. And what I decided is that I have so many books at my fingertips. I am able to work from my office. It's just me in here. And I have a lot of children's books at my fingertips, specifically therapeutic books. And I figured so many people would probably love to have these books in their homes right now. And I'm not going to start passing them out because of all that's going on. But what I can do is maybe read some of those books and help you to have those books in your home and to read them to kids. So feel free to check that out. But one of the books that I did read was this book called The Way I Feel. And it basically describes a number of different feelings. And I think it's really important to help kids be able to name their feelings. I feel frustrated when, I feel sad when, I feel scared when. And I teach kids in my work, I teach them I statements. So this is an example of an I statement. I feel bored, so you put the feeling in. I feel bored when, and that's the situation. So I wrote, it's raining. I felt that on Shabbos a little bit. And then there's the request. I need something to do. And if we can help our kids express their feelings and use I statements, it will go a long way. So feel free to check out that YouTube channel. I also did this other book here that's also a feelings book, The Color Monster, which is a fun pop-up book. And that also talks about feelings. And then right now I also have a book about anxiety for kids. The other thing that's really important is to validate your kids' feelings. If somebody is starting to seem upset, if one of your kids is starting to seem upset, Validate their feeling, sit with it, describe what it is that they're describing. So for example, my son started talking about how there isn't going to probably be a 6th grade graduation. And I just said back to him, it sounds like you're really sad that there may not be a 6th grade graduation. And then just pause and see what else comes out. Let the kids talk. I think so often we're quick to reassure them, and sometimes it's important just to pause and hear them out. Some of you may have heard M. Gary Newman gave an excellent class on h.com recently. I was trying to get a copy of the recording and I wasn't able to, but if you are able to find it, it was excellent. And it was also talking about helping kids at this time. And he had this idea of the pausing before rushing to reassure them. We can reassure those kids about what we can do. And I don't know if any of you saw, there was something going around Facebook. You're probably not going to be able to see this, but it was about rocks and Play-Doh. And it talks about having a rock in your hand and having Play-Doh or some sort of putty in your hand. And you say to the kid, squeeze the rock as hard as you can. Try to bend it, roll it between your hands. Are you able to change the rock? And then it says, place the Play-Doh or the putty in your hand. Squeeze it as hard as you can, bend it, roll it between your hands. Are you able to change the Play-Doh or the silly putty? Basically, what they say is that in times like this, we need to think of the rock and the Play-Doh. The rock is hard and can't be changed. You can't control the shape that it takes. What are the Play-Dohs in your life right now? What can you control? Believe it or not, there are some things we have control over in terms of what's happening in the world right now. And so they give examples on here of the rocks and the Play-Dohs. So what we can't control, the rocks, would be maybe what other people do, what other people say, school cancellations, the news, sickness, and others. And then the Play-Dohs are things you can control. What I say, what I do, the way I treat people, my attitude, hand washing and hygiene, how much I watch on TV or online. So you guys get the idea. But I think it's important to talk to kids about the things we can't change and the things we can change. One thing that's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, and I think it's important with kids, is not to lie. I wouldn't say things to a kid like, there's nothing to worry about, or everything is fine, or, you know, you don't have anything to worry about. We want our kids to trust us. And it's a scary time. So it's okay to join them some in, yeah, it's scary. There's some scary things out there. But also, again, we can reassure them of certain things, right? We're doing what we can to stay healthy. That's why we're practicing physical distancing. That's why we're washing our hands a lot. That's why we're limiting the amount of time that we're interacting with other people, etc. I also think it's important with kids to model and to talk about flexibility, or as a lot of us call it, our plan B. This is not what any of us want right now, but we have to figure out a plan B, or in this case, maybe even a plan C or a plan D. I was just talking to a friend today who was changing a bat mitzvah date around. This is not what they wanted. They didn't want to have to do that. In fact, they were going to go to Israel, and now they can't go to Israel for the bat mitzvah. They have to come up with a plan, probably C or D in this case. But we're modeling flexibility for our kids. I am so impressed. I saw one girl give her bat mitzvah speech on Facebook that was incredible. I saw beautiful bar mitzvah pictures of a boy and his parents and siblings all smiling from ear to ear. There were weddings, as I'm sure you saw, in the streets of Baltimore in someone's backyard. We ended up having my dad's 75th birthday over Zoom. All amazing things. And we're seeing that we can flex. And if we can try to have a positive attitude about it, a phrase I like is, it is what it is, right? Sometimes we just need to use that phrase, it is what it is. Another thing for kids, get your kids exercising. So not just the benefits of exercising for us, but also getting our kids exercising. I am so grateful to a friend of mine who came up with this idea to have a competition with other kids in our friend group. And basically, we had all the kids in groups competing against other groups of kids of various ages. My kids have never exercised more in their lives. In fact, one kid in the group got 6.5 hours of exercise a day. And the only reason he stopped at 6.5 hours because his basketball coach told him that he shouldn't exercise more than that. And my kids were trying to catch up with him and to keep up with that. They didn't come anywhere near that, but it got them outside. It got them playing basketball. It got them riding a bike. It got them walking to Brookside Gardens and noticing nature. It was amazing. And they felt good. And I was coming home late at night and they were saying, do you want to go for a walk? And I was taking a walk with them because we both actually were in a competition, and it was great for all of us. Get your kids on a routine if you can. That means including bedtime, class schedules, etc. And I just want to give a huge shout out to the schools out there that have helped to create this routine for our students. It is truly remarkable. I want to thank all the teachers and administrators for all that you are doing to help teach our kids right now. You are going so above and beyond, and I am absolutely wowed by the things that I'm seeing out there in terms of the educating that's going on, and kol hakavod to all of you, and thank you for, again, going above and beyond. I want to be able to give you some concrete skills for managing anxiety. I want to give you some of my favorites. So anybody that knows me knows that my absolute favorite skill that I teach is something called one nostril breathing. And I'm sure if my kids were watching this, they would be making fun of me right now, but I know that they're not watching, so all is good. But this skill of one nostril breathing is, for me, amazing in helping to decrease anxiety. And I teach it to kids, to teens, to adults. And when I talk to people that I have, that I no longer work with, and I see them after a while, and I might say to them, what are some of the things I taught you that you find that you benefit most from? Hands down, everybody says this one nostril breathing thing. So I just want to go ahead and take a second to teach you all that, so that at least when we leave here tonight, you have this one skill, if nothing else. So one nostril breathing is basically you close your mouth and you take one finger and you put it over one nostril. And actually, I encourage you to close your eyes when you do this. And I'm going to have you breathe in for the count of 6 and then out for the count of 6, keeping your finger on your one nostril the whole time and keeping your mouth closed the whole time. So let's try it together. We're going to put one finger over one nostril. Close your mouth, close your eyes, and let's count in for the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Keeping your mouth closed, out for the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's keep your eyes closed. Let's do it again. In for the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And out for the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to have you do it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Beautiful. Hopefully some of you even feel a little bit more relaxed right now. I'm not sure why it works. There are different things I've heard, but for me, it really does work. And for a lot of the people I work with, it works. And this is something easy that you can teach your kids. You can do it yourself. I encourage you to practice when you're calm. So if for you, that's before you go to sleep, great. If it's after you've, taken a bath or gone exercising or something, great. Try it when you're already relaxed. That's the best time to practice it. And then when you're feeling anxious, you already have the effect of having it work for you. So I highly recommend it. You can let me know when I see you around if it helps for you. I know for me, Friday night dinner, when things are starting to get heated, I can just sit there and do it. And I'm like, okay, I can manage this. Okay. Mindfulness with the 5 senses. This is another strategy that I love. Mindfulness is staying in the present. And I think right now, this is more important than ever. Basically, what we have learned is that when people focus on the past, for whatever reason, sometimes people start to feel down and depressed. When we focus on the future, we tend to feel anxious. So the idea is to stay in the present, to stay in the here and now. Right now, all I'm focused on is talking to you in this meeting. I'm not thinking about, oh my gosh, my house and how much I need to clean. I'm not thinking about what I need to do in the future, whatever it is. We're not thinking about the past. We're not thinking about the future. We're just focused on the present. So one way to help us do that is using our 5 senses: touch or feel, taste, sight, hearing, and smelling. So when we think about what we can do in each of those areas, for touch and for feel, we think about how can we soothe using the sense of touch. One thing is some kids like to play with putty. That can be soothing for them. Some people are lucky enough to have a real dog. Maybe this is a hint for my husband that I want a dog. I think he knows that. But, you know, petting a real animal or petting a stuffed animal can be very soothing for people. Maybe it's having a weighted blanket on you that can feel really good. A soft blanket, just touching it. For some kids, holding on to a piece of a parent's clothing that they like and it's soft and cozy, you know, that can feel soothing to a kid. So touch can be a really nice way to self-soothe. Another way is through taste. Really focusing on what it is that you're tasting, taking a second to taste the flavor, to feel the texture in your mouth. When I teach this, I do it with Hershey Kisses. Highly encourage you with your kids, take something like a sucking candy or a Hershey Kiss, and you know, you can even turn off the lights if you want. You don't have to. You can have them close their eyes, but just have them put the candy in their mouth and just suck on it and just focus on the taste and the feel. It's very soothing. We can do this with cold drinks. We can do it with, you know, hot drinks. Maybe it's a hot chocolate type thing, but taste and really spending the time, like taking your time to taste it, can be very soothing. Okay, in terms of sight, you can look at pictures in your house. Just pick any picture that you like and look at it. Maybe it's a photograph that you want to look at. Maybe it's looking at the trees outside. Maybe it's looking at a flower. Maybe it's looking at the clouds in the sky and trying to make sense of some shapes that you see in clouds. But looking at things and seeing things can be soothing as well. For some people, it's watching a TV show, watching a video, these silly cat videos people like that are funny. Humor can go a long way as well. For hearing or listening, I actually was at Brookside Gardens. I don't know if anybody else saw this. They actually have a mindfulness activity where there's a sign. I see someone shaking his head. There's a sign now where it says, stop, close your eyes, take a second and just listen to the sounds of nature. And I did it the other day and the birds were chirping like crazy and I heard a waterfall and I didn't even know there was a waterfall nearby. And you really hear things that you wouldn't otherwise hear when you take a second and stop to really pay attention to sound. Listening to music can be great for kids and adults. It can change up the mood and help you feel good. Smell, cookies in the oven. For some people right now, I feel like it's hand sanitizer. That's all I'm smelling. Laundry being done outside when I'm taking a walk at night. I love the smell of homes that are doing laundry. Bounces actually, oopsie. I bring this out with kids, these bounce sheets, but I love the smell of clean laundry. For some people, it's a spray. You know, they have their favorite scent that they spray. For some people, it's aromatherapy. It could be like these essential oils. This is a peppermint oil. This is an amazing one, Volcano Blue. I don't know if anyone's heard of this one. It smells amazing. And you can put it in a diffuser and just keep it on in your house. Or you can just smell it, and it's really soothing to smell. Okay, so that is mindfulness with the 5 senses. Next, I just want to talk about extending our possible activities, because I'm hearing a lot of kids are bored right now. And the less we can kind of do out there in the world, the more we need to be creative. And so I've been asking kids as I've been working with them over the last couple weeks, what are you doing right now? Like, what are the activities you're doing? And I'm keeping a list, and then I add theirs to it. And I share those ideas with my clients so that their ideas for things to do can be expanded. So some ideas that I'm hearing out there: biking, art, throwing a ball around with a sibling or parent, puzzles, knitting or crocheting, sidewalk chalk. In fact, I don't know if you can see this. This is one of my favorites. A grad school friend posted this on her Facebook page, where her daughter just took sidewalk chalk and made this beautiful picture out of kind of like doodling shapes and hearts and things. And it was just really pretty. And I thought that was great. Some people are doing facials. I have permission to show. I love this picture one of my friends sent of her child. They were doing facials. And to me, this was just such a like Zen calming activity to do with kids, and how nice it looks. So there's so many different activities we can do. And what I'm going to encourage you each to do is, you have a chat box. For those of you that are familiar with Zoom, it'll be easier to do right now. For those of you that are not, there is a chat box here. And I encourage you to just write in the chat box one thing that your kids have done this week, or that you've done this week, an activity that you thought was a little bit fun and maybe even a little different. It doesn't have to be different, but just take a second to write one, and then you guys can scroll through it and it will just increase. I see painting on canvas. Great. I love that. They're coming up. Paint a shed. Oh, thank you, Julie. Yes, Julie's son, I hope it's okay. You put it out there. Julie's son painted our shed today, which was pretty cool. Pulling out Legos. That's awesome. Yes. And actually, if anybody's watching Lego Masters, it's a great show. Kids are getting really into it. You can create your own Lego Masters show at home or with friends, or maybe we can do it through Facebook or some other modality. Taught my kids, oh, that one went fast, Daphna. Baked a birthday cake. I missed Daphna's, taught her kids something. Made pita bread. Nice. Painted Kriyat Yom Suf for Pesach. Beautiful. So many good ideas baked for Pesach. Oh gosh, you're ahead of me. Family Zumba, awesome. Yeah, there are so many great ideas. Hopscotch, I love that. Oh my gosh, bring back hopscotch. Thank you, Judy. Activities for seniors, that's a good question. Let's talk about it at the end. Made paper flowers with Talia Weinberg. I heard Talia's doing that. That's so wonderful and beautiful. Talia is a great artist and just a great resource in our community right now. Okay, thank you everybody for your ideas. So this last thing I want to touch on, maybe not last, but one of the last things before we break into question and answers, I think it's really helpful for us to take a step back and think about what is it that we are grateful for right now. Many of you have probably heard that one thing to do when you're feeling down is to focus on the things you're grateful for in life. In fact, Oprah years and years ago used to talk about creating a grateful journal where you literally keep a little journal next to your bed, and you write at the end of the day 3 things that you're grateful for, ideally that happened that day. It can be in general, but the best way to do it is 3 things that day that you feel grateful for. So I've had kids start in my sessions to talk about things that they're grateful for. I'm also making a list, and then I'm sharing it with, you know, among kids, because I think it's helpful for them to see that they really, thank God, have a lot to be grateful for. I'll share with you some of the things some of my kids have said, and then we're going to do the same thing in the chat box. Kids that I've worked with have said they're grateful for having a TV. They're grateful for having friends. They're grateful for a family. They're grateful for having maybe siblings. They're grateful for having toys that they can play with. They're thankful for being creative and being able to think of things to do and then do them. They're grateful for having a bike that they can go out and ride. They're grateful for Brookside Gardens nearby. So I'm sorry, I keep using Brookside Gardens as an example, but it is my like true savior right now, and hopefully they won't close it, please God. So anyway, let's take a second and let's write in the chat box one thing maybe that you feel grateful for that happened ideally today. Great neighbors, awesome, I agree. I'm grateful for the spring blossoms. I'm seeing parts of things, so maybe not the full. Good weather, yes. Love the good weather. Electricity, yes. Oh my gosh, last Friday when the electricity went out, I was on with a student. Friends, my wonderful sister, beautiful. You do have a wonderful sister, Abby Moses. I'm sorry, I have to agree with that. She's amazing. Great, great ideas. Thank you, everybody. Feel free to scroll through those and see more. Finally played a few piano chords. Beautiful. I love that people are starting to play the piano. Somebody actually they took their piano, Jen, this person, Jen, who I worked with at Shomrai, no morning rush. Yes, a lot of people are saying, the kids are actually saying sleeping in an extra hour. But anyway, someone I know from Shomrai brought their piano outside of an old age home, and she just started playing for some of the residents in the old age nursing home, and it was just beautiful listening to her on the Facebook post. Okay, excellent. So let's try to focus on the things that we're grateful for and also helping our kids. You know, it's a great activity to do at dinner. I loved learning in grad school about how resilient kids generally are. And I think about this all the time when people come to me about either an impending divorce, a loss in the family, a traumatic experience. Kids are typically quite resilient and they do bounce back. I hope that you all can keep this in mind throughout this time. some of you may have read this, but this is another one of my favorites that I saw on Facebook. And I thought this was an incredible thing for perspective. It's a college student in 2030 and the year 2030. And he says, quote, he's talking to his mom, or it says a parent. He says, in history class, we learned that COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 was really bad. What was it like? He's asking his mom. Parent, well, everything was shut down in an attempt to kill the virus, but not everyone followed the order to quarantine for 15 days, so it lasted longer than everyone expected. Many people died who shouldn't have. Grocery stores were out of everything because people were hoarding as much as they could. We were scared of economic failure for our country and for ourselves because we couldn't work. Don't you remember it? You were 8. College kid. All I remember was the school closing and being homeschooled. I remember doing scavenger hunts in our yard. I remember eating meals as a family for a change. I remember getting great sleep because I wasn't up late for homework or getting up early for school. I remember board games as a family. I remember watching our pastor on our laptop. Honestly, it was the happiest time of my childhood. So this really resonated with me and struck a chord. And I hope that it does for you as well, because I think so much, I know we're carrying a lot of worry right now, but how we can help our kids manage this, hopefully they can even take away a touch of this and feeling like some good is coming from this. There are some good things that they can focus on and feel good about this when all is said and done, God willing. So I just want to say that our kids and we are blessed with many protective factors. And with Hashem's help, along with our Rebbeim, our friends, our family members, we will, God willing, get through this as individuals and as a community. So for this last part, I actually am going to ask you, some of you may have kids in the room with you. I know it's getting later, so hopefully kids are starting to go to bed, but this is a really short part before we go into question and answer. So I'm going to ask you if there's any way to kind of send our kids out for this last part. Also, because when we do question and answers, some people's faces and names are attached, and for privacy, I just want to make sure that kids are not necessarily seeing who asks what. So I'm going to give you a minute to see if we can kind of either set our kids up to read or to go to bed maybe, or to be on a screen or something, just so that we don't have an audience of kids for this last part. And I know we all wish it would only take 1 minute to get our kids off of the screen with us. Okay, thank you. So this last part I just want to throw in as a kind of note of maybe what not to do. I think some of this may be obvious, but I'm just going to put it out there anyway. The first thing is that I know it is so tempting to keep watching the news and listening to the news. I myself am pretty addicted, and if I didn't have this job that I kept having to leave for, I would be listening and watching a lot more than I am. It's not great for our anxiety, and certainly if the kids are listening to it and watching it, it's not good for their anxiety either. So I encourage you to try as much as you can not to listen as much to the news and all the talking about the coronavirus, and not to talk about it all the time in the house. As much as you can, talk about other things, focus on other things. The other thing I want to ask you to do is, as much as you can, try not to what we call catastrophize in front of our kids. It's very easy to do this. A lot of us tend to go to that worst place possible scenario. And if, a grandparent isn't feeling well, to go to a place of, look, yeah, he may pass away. And I'm not saying not to talk about it if it's very real, but as much as we can, try not to constantly go to that worst place scenario with the kids. I think that just increases the anxiety, obviously, and makes it harder for them. And then I also think we need to pay attention to the kind of talk that we are doing in front of our kids with regard to, I've heard a couple people say, oh, now's the time we need to get a gun to protect ourselves because there might be riots and house break-ins. And I'm not saying this to create your own anxiety. But I have heard people say that, and they've said it in front of kids, and that certainly is going to increase a kid's anxiety around this. So I just caution you to kind of pay attention to how we're talking about this, what we're watching, etc. So on that note, I hope that you guys have received some takeaways, some strategies to manage anxiety, both for ourselves and for our kids. And I'd like to open it up to questions and answers. And again, I really encourage other people. I know I'm going to now get out of my notes and be able to see who else is on here, but I know some people told me that they were going to be joining. So I believe we're going to have other psychologists, therapists, you name it, on here. But so many of us have so much we can offer one another. So feel free to go ahead. I'm not seeing the chat room, but let's go ahead and ask any questions that you guys have. Yep, here it is. Okay. Any questions?
Yes. What strategies do you have for families that have people who do have these illnesses already and have more concern, more anxiety because of the underlying illnesses? What can they do?
Yeah, it's really hard. Are you asking specifically, like, what can the adults do? What can we do for our kids? Both?
More for adults who have these.
Yeah, it's so hard. I mean, I think it really is going to depend on obviously how sick the person is. Are they home? Are they in the hospital? I mean, it's so tragic to think that, you know, so many people are so sick and in the hospital and they can't have their loved ones nearby. And it's really, when you really stop and think about it, it is just, it's heartbreaking. So I guess I would say, you know, whatever we can do, if that means calling the person, if that means sending a card in the mail if they are home, if that means setting up Zoom. I couldn't believe that I was able, I'm not technologically savvy, and my parents really, really are not. They're real dinosaurs in this era, and in terms of the technology. And I was able to, over the phone, teach my mom how to get onto Zoom. And we had my dad's 75th birthday party over Zoom. He's, you know, unfortunately not well himself. And I would just say, you know, trying to get ourselves to call those people and send love and support in any way we can. I don't know, anybody else have any ideas of things that have worked for them? Feel free to unmute yourselves. I think you have the ability to do that.
So, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I was hoping you'd address a little bit certain problems of
Jack, can you hold on one second? I think that Yael Sugar has an answer possibly.
Oh, and just a suggestion along with what you said, my mom is in the middle of chemo treatment, so she can't be around anybody or go anywhere, do anything other than going to and from her chemo. And she has found it incredibly helpful that when the kids call throughout the day, grandkids and kids calling her, FaceTiming her, and sort of just sending pictures of what everyone's doing helps her feel somewhat connected and a little bit less like alone at this time.
Thank you. Okay, Jack, wherever you are, if you want to come back, I don't see you.
Yeah, I'm back. I wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about the problems of seniors living alone with no family. And I know, you know, stay connected to people, and I've learned the resources about getting food, but I'm going to ask you more just internally. You know, come back when all the outside is done. I'm here alone. Panic sets in at night, you know, middle of the night. It's hard to control that stuff. And, you know, I feel like I just have to live with that now. It gets harder.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think that, you know, maybe thinking about previous times that have been rough and kind of what has gotten people through that in the past. I think it's really individual in terms of what your hobbies are. So if you like to read, if you like to do art, if you like to listen to music, play music, whatever it is that are your hobbies, I think that's something to turn to right now. It's Yeah, it's rough. And I
Right.
hear what you're saying also in terms of the thoughts that go through our mind.
Yeah.
I think right now we have to do a lot of distraction, as much
Yeah.
distraction as we can just to pass the time. And I know that, you know, when this ends, we're going to have a lot to clean up. But I think right now it goes back to this idea of mindfulness. What can we do in that moment to just stay in the present and be able to be as okay in that moment as possible? And that might be taking a sip of hot tea, and it might be thinking about the beautiful things in your life. It might be taking out, you know, I think about taking out photo albums that I have of my kids, and maybe you have some of, you know, family over the years, and just bringing back some joy. Yeah. Any other questions, or anybody else have answers to that?
I like your earlier suggestion of the candle lighting with a neighbor. And we've done some of that with some neighbors at a appropriate distance, going out and schmoozing. And we found that has been very helpful.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I have a friend of mine I was talking to right before this, and she came back home from New York, and we haven't seen each other since she came back. And all of a sudden, you know, she said over Shabbos, she said she really did. Somebody stopped by, and they were very far apart, but they got to hang out. And it made me think, here she is. I haven't seen her in ages. I'm dying to see her. She's actually expecting, and I want to see her little bump. And I was thinking, like, I can go walk over and call her and say, okay, come outside. I'm going to be across the street, and I'm going to be able to see you and talk to you from across the street. Even if I'm on the phone, sometimes I do that. I do a walk and talk with some friends sometimes, and we're literally a block apart. We're on the phone talking to each other, but we're both walking. And somehow there's this sense of togetherness, even though we're not side by side walking.
Very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Other questions?
Can I just add something? It's not a question, but I think a lot of people don't realize right now there's a lot of mental health services available via telehealth, especially through insurance companies. So a lot of us are federal employees or federal retirees, for example, and the most popular plans are like the Blue Cross Blue Shield standard and basic plans. And right now, those plans have $0 copays for all the telehealth provided through their teledoc service on Blue Cross Blue Shield. And they're basically if you request a therapist, they're basically guaranteeing an appointment that week. And it's $0 copays. So let's say you have anxiety or things are tough. I mean, you can just go online, get yourself a therapist, and have like 45 minute to 1 hour long therapy sessions for free, and have someone to talk to and someone to give you ideas when you need them. And you can even make that therapist your recurring therapist. And I'm pretty certain a lot of other health plans are doing something similar. And additionally, if let's say you don't have insurance right now, there is an open enrollment for the Maryland Health Exchange because of coronavirus. It might be a good time to look into that and see what mental health options that they have. But I think that could be helpful for a lot of people, and it's not something that's been very well advertised.
Allison, thank you so much for sharing that. I actually didn't know about all of that, so that's really helpful. Also, if people come to me and I don't have availability, to be able to share that. And if you have any other details that you want to put in this chat, my understanding is when a session is recording, which this is, that the chat also is recorded. So if you have any, want to write a little bit of that in the chat box, that might be something that people can come back to and read about. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to,
if you can.
Look at the thing.
Yeah, and thank you also for your ideas. I'm able to read a little bit now. The abundance of Torah learning via Zoom. I agree, that's a fantastic thing. So thank you for some of your ideas on this too. Any other questions?
That's it.
Is that you, Rini? Did you have a question? No? Okay, I thought I saw a hand. It's kind of dark. Okay, well, I don't need to keep you just to keep you. I know it's a late night, and I appreciate everybody coming out and being here together to talk about this important topic. If anybody does want to reach out to me, I guess the best way would be through email. It's Dr. Rachel, R-A-C-H-E-L, Ravin, R-A-V-I-N, @gmail.com. And just, let's all, we're in this together, and God willing, we'll get to the other side together. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you for hosting.
My pleasure.
Thank you very
so
much.
much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, all.
Thank you, Rachel.
My pleasure.